Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for volunteering with us today at the Celebration with Service project with Lyft New York, and we're excited to have Lyft join us today. For those who don't know, Lyft has been a corporate partner of Neuberger Berman for the past 5 years. They've been the grantee for the past 5 years. We've done many Celebration with Service projects and Lift and Learns and other projects with Lyft New York. And in a nutshell, Lyft New York was founded in 1999. Lyft National was founded in 1998. And there are 4 regional Lyft offices: New York, DC, Chicago, and LA. New York's the best, though. And basically, Lyft partners with parents to break the cycle of poverty. Lyft does one-on-one coaching with parents on many different subjects: education, eliminating debt, and securing a job and housing and everything that I think we all take for granted. Lyft does amazing, amazing work with parents, which then trickles down to the children and, to eliminate the cycle of poverty. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce the Lyft staff members. Hannah Wood, Director of Development Coordinator. Pedro Suarez, Program Director, Strategic Partnerships. And Xiomara Romaine is the Executive Director for Lyft. Xiomara?
Overview of Lyft and our work. Just welcome you all. Thank you so much, as Lori said, for giving your time, your service to what I think is an amazing. Today, we have the privilege and honor of bringing to you our speaker series called Elevating Parent Voice. And it's really this idea that we want to create a platform and a space for their stories in their own words, and also to have them be able to weigh in on important issues. They will be discussing that for me is very personal. It's about being a student parent and what it's been like during the pandemic. There's about 1 in 5 undergraduate students in this country, children, or that are parents to children under the age of 18. Before the pandemic, they faced a disproportionate amount of challenges related to being able to or complete their education. The pandemic has made those challenges, but yet at the same time, people remain very resilient. Today, we have invited one of our student parents, Ellie, to talk to you about her story. Also provide us with some insights and ways in which higher education can best support. I am going to next introduce our amazing moderator. Her name is Dr. Candis. I have to read this bio because it's actually amazing just to hear and to know all the amazing things that Dr. Bess has done. So Dr. Candis Bess is an educator, a consultant, a speaker, and an author. In May of 2008, she made her literary debut with Leaving Legacies, Reflections from the Pickley Path to Leadership. Entertaining and moving account of her 11-year odyssey as a public health recognized by the USA Book News as one of the best books of 2000. Before embarking on a successful career in public health administration, Dr. Bess worked as an attorney in private practice. She is licensed to practice in the state of New York and New Jersey, as well as before the federal courts of the Eastern District of New York. In addition to a law degree from Villanova University, she possesses a master's in business administration from Adelphi University, a master's in psychology from Capella University, and a PhD in social work, research, and policy development from Stony Brook University. I am honored and privileged to introduce you guys to Dr. Bess.
Thank you. I thought, sure, I sent a shorter bio, so I apologize for that.
There was no way to shorten that.
It's really my pleasure to be here. What we didn't mention that is dear to my heart is the time I spent as an educator, which is why I was so excited to be able to participate in this. And almost the entire time that I did teach at the college level, I was teaching adults, and many of them were parents. And so I'm so honored to have the opportunity to be connected to an organization that is helping student parents persist, because we know statistically what an impact it can have on your future when you're able to finish your degree. So the theme of this event is educational persistence. What's more important than talking to students who have gone through this, as well as professionals from education who are making these things possible. So I want to just introduce our panelists. Gisele Velaz?
Yes.
Is a student at John Jay, and Sherry Cleary, I guess, is the University Dean of Early Childhood Initiatives at CUNY and the Executive Director of the New York Early Childhood Professional Development Institute. So we're going to start with our honored guest, and I'm going to pose a few questions to Gisele. I just want to start with, tell us a little bit about time at John Jay, what brought you there, and what your experiences have been like as a student parent.
So I appreciate being here. My name is Gisele Velos. I am a born and raised Bronxite, homegrown. I am a single mother of two boys, a 9-year-old and a 4-year-old. My 4-year-old is special needs. He is on the autism spectrum. I originally started my educational career at Hostos Community College, where I received an associate's degree in community health. During that time is where I established my connection with the Phenomenal Lift program, and as well as the services at Hostos provided, of course, by CUNY. One of the programs that I joined was the Empowering Student Parents program, which basically connected me to the network that I needed in order to find resources, just speak to someone. Being a student parent, an adult, going back to school after years is a challenge. And also struggling, having financial difficulties, not having the support from my family to help me financially so that I can achieve the greater goal of getting an education and establishing a job was a challenge. The pandemic happened. It affected us all in so many different ways. During that time, I was finishing my education at Hostos and then decided on it. Do I want to continue? And I had the support. I was blessed enough to have not only Lyft pushing me, but I had the phenomenal staff at Hostos also helping me throughout that time to transition to John Jay, where I am now, class of 2022, completing my bachelor's and my master's in forensic psychology this semester. Thank you. So, again, I'm happy to be an example of what services look like.
Can you talk a little bit more about the kinds of services that really made an impact on your ability to persist to this?
So the biggest, and I can't say it enough, was just having the availability of resources. So like I mentioned, I was part of the Empowering Student Parents program at Hostos, which provided us with workshops that we can attend. During our time, Lyft came in, offered us the availability to be part of their program, to participate in their workshops and their services. With their partnership, now I had financial support. By participating in the workshops, I had an opportunity to not only network, but the opportunities to gain that financial support. When the pandemic happened as well, a lot of us had to transition now to making sure that our homes are like home base for schools, for our children, and also for ourselves. So with the financial resources that were provided by Lyft, I was able to make sure that I had internet connection, I had a laptop, I had a tablet for my children, I had, of course, food at home, food for my family, making sure that I had those services. Prior to the pandemic, the biggest challenge was childcare. You know, in my situation, as I had mentioned in a conversation earlier, I was one of those people that was fortunate enough to have my mom available. My mom kind of just swooped in. But before that, when I was trying to juggle both of my children at such a different age, one needing after-school care, one needed the day care, it was challenging. But I had Lyft and I had CUNY to both support me as best as they could to kind of navigate for me and provide me resources, make those phone calls while I was in class. While I was stressing where to place my children, I did have other people that were out there trying to seek the help that I needed, the financial help that I needed to also pay for childcare, pay for services. So in that sense, I did have advocacy, but again, I had to advocate for myself as well. I had to say, like, I need this in order to kind of get the wheels turning.
What are some of the areas where you think there's still opportunity to help students like yourself, or even students who may not even be as far along as you are?
Number one, I honestly would say the availability of classes. Being that we went into the pandemic and we went into a synchronous setting where we were remote, but we were on Zoom, and having the professors, I think that was something that was very appealing, because a lot of student parents were hesitant to go back to school because I don't have someone to stay with my child, or I only have this small window while they're at school, but then I have to run back to pick them up because I don't have someone to pick them up. So just having that availability that flexibility of the timing, I think that's very important. And overall, just the childcare setting. At Hostos, that was the most time because of the pandemic that I was on campus. They do have a childcare center that needs, more time, whether it be 7 o'clock drop-off or 7 p.m. pickups. Just having the resources available for childcare, either on campuses or externally, if we have like partnerships with other daycares, just to have that available for student parents that can say, you know what, after 3 o'clock, I don't have anyone to stay with my child, so I can't go to school. It's different if you have that resource.
Great opportunity to transition to Dean Cleary. So you've heard some of the comments. Obviously, you're well familiar with it. So tell us a little bit about what your program does and how you've risen to the needs of these students.
Thank you. To make that leap to graduation, and we are so proud. But you should be so proud. We take no credit. So one of my major roles is to really work with CUNY around student-parent success. We have thousands and thousands and thousands of student parents. And in the last 2 years, under our new leadership, we've created a student-parent task force that I've had the privilege of chairing. And we are in the process of putting together a set of recommendations because, as Gisele points out, there's all kinds of wonderful things that are available to student parents, but it will never be enough. And there's far more that we can do. And I would say this about student parents. I've worked with student parents for the better part of my 45-year career. It's hard to imagine. And there's an amazing magical quality of student parents. They are insanely, incredibly driven. They are committed to success. They may be young, they may be not so young. Regardless, they are mature. They are mature by development, or they're mature by necessity, because they are no longer just responsible for themselves. They are responsible for others, and they are responsible for others who are incredibly and totally dependent on them. And they know that if they get an education, they will be able to provide for their children, and that they will also be an extraordinary role model for their children. So, some people argue, well, you should go to college before you have children. I would argue that Gisele's 2 children have the best role model ever, because they have seen her value higher education and persist and pursue those degrees. And so what a gift that you've given them that not everybody, grows up with. Let me tell you very quickly a little bit about the task force.
we, about over a year ago, not quite, about a year ago, we did a survey of as many student parents as we could identify in the undergraduate world. So we have a whole additional population of student parents in the graduate world, but we wanted to get as best we could a sense from our undergraduates. We had a 30% response rate to our survey. It blew us away. I don't know how many nights I worried we wouldn't get anybody, because you have a lot of nerve asking a student parent to take one more minute to fill out a survey after they've done everything that they have to do. I will say this, I've said it for the last 30 years, at least, that a student parent is the only person that has two 24-hour jobs. The rest of us are loving life. We're the masters of our own fate. A student parent is totally parenting 24 hours a day. And if you're a college student, you are a college student for 24 hours a day. You could always rewrite that paper. You can always read the chapter one more time. You can always do better, and it sits on your shoulders. So we were reluctant to do a survey and ask them to do one more thing. But nevertheless, 30% response rate, that meant we got almost 4,000 responses. And of those 4,000, we asked these students whether they would like to talk to somebody separately. And the people who designed the survey kept saying, "You're crazy. You don't ask those things in a survey. What if they say yes?" And we laughed. We said, "Oh, that would be great." Well, hundreds wanted to talk. 858 of these student parents wrote additional comments on the survey itself. They want a voice, they want to be heard, and they have extremely valuable stuff to tell us. So we not only, read the survey, read all the 858 responses, but we also did one-on-one meetings with student parents on days, but mostly nights and weekends. And, of course, we learned that after 8 o'clock is better than any other time for a student parent, because with a little bit of luck, their youngest children are in bed by then. Not in every case, and I'll share one specific example with you. I had an extraordinary meeting with a student parent at 9 o'clock at night. The screen comes up. I'm looking at a seemingly very strong-looking man, and I say, "Thank you so much for making time for me. Tell me your story." And this person begins to speak and says, "Well, the first thing I'll tell you is that I'm a trans male. Second thing I'll tell you is that I've always wanted children, and so I waited to start my transition until I had my daughter." And he then takes his screen and shifts it. I'm getting these chills all over again. And there is this 18-month-old baby girl in a diaper jumping on the couch. And he then turns it back and he says, "So we may be interrupted." At this point, I'm like, "It's okay." And he proceeded to tell me his story of how he goes to school, how he works at night at Madison Square Garden, that he lives in this apartment, this one-bedroom apartment with his mother and this baby, and they together have formed a family unit, an extended family unit that is making this whole thing work. And for the umpteenth time, I was just humbled by that. But here's some other things we learned. 18% of our student parent population has 3 or more children. Just a moment. Process. 45% have, now I have to use my glasses. 45% have a child under 4, 46% have children between 5 and 10 years of age, and then the other compelling statistic is that 19% of our student parents have kids 14 to 18 years old. I don't know how many of you have ever parented an adolescent. That is a really difficult piece of work. And the fact that you could do anything other than parent the adolescent is a feat. So that was stunning to us, that they could be working, going to school, and parenting kids of different ages. It will come as no surprise that the highest barrier to success identified by students was 68% of them said money was a huge barrier. And it makes all the sense in the world. 47% identified stress, anxiety, and depression. Granted, this was right smack in the middle of the pandemic, but I would suspect that the numbers would not be much different pre-pandemic. I don't know what post-pandemic will ever look like. Here, very quickly, are the recommendations that we're considering making to the chancellor. We need money. We need to give student parents money. As bizarre as that might sound, we did it during the pandemic. The chancellor immediately raised funds from private philanthropy, and we simply quarterly gave it to students. And student parents got more because we figured their dependence in. The other thing is to really build a better CUNY culture. Students told us that some of their faculty, they could tell them they had children, and some they knew not to tell them they had children. That's a flag. That's a concern. We should be celebrating student parents. And anybody who has an attitude that is other than that, that needs to change. We have to work on our culture. We also have to work on our communication strategies, because every CUNY campus has a food pantry, has a counseling center, has emergency services, but if you don't need them today, you don't know that those exist. You don't look at that email, you don't think about it. And when you do need those services, you're in crisis, and you're certainly not going to start checking your emails. So we have to figure that out. How do we stay so deeply connected to student parents that the minute they're in crisis, they have a strategy we can be a part of? So that's another recommendation. A fourth recommendation, or maybe we're on the fifth one now, is to make sure that we have extended hours for faculty, staff, and service offices. In other words, if you need to talk to somebody in financial aid, you can't do that at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, you can't do that at 8 o'clock in the morning, and you sure can't do that at 7 p.m. because you are making dinner, you're putting kids to bed, you're helping kids with homework. But maybe by 8:30 p.m., you could make a call. You could do something. So we are advocating for everybody, faculty and student service offices and staff, to be available. Maybe not 5 days a week, but something close. And then really to amplify the student-parent voice, because everybody always assumes they know what you need, but we don't know what you need until you tell us. Quickly, CUNY has 17 campus child care centers. Some of them are open 7 days a week, 5 nights a week. Others are not. During the pandemic, the Hostess Center was closed. So that was a huge challenge for student parents at Hostess. One example. The other thing that we see the Campus Child Care Center as the extended family. Not everybody has a mom who is so deeply devoted and committed to their child's success and their grandchildren's success. So how does that campus child care serve as the extended family? And we have example after example where the director of the program is totally checking in on student parents on a daily basis. During the pandemic, directors would call their student parents and say, "We'll get to your child in a minute. I need to know how you are. Are you paying your bills? Do you have work? Are you feeding your family? Do you have enough food? Can we drop anything off?" That notion of we're not letting you go is the way an extended family is supposed to function. So we work on that ethos all the time. There's more money in the state budget this year for new campus child care centers. I've been to Queensboro twice. It's the only major campus that doesn't have a campus child care center. Hopefully within a year it will. So there's movement in that way. And then I guess that what I would say is that, the pandemic has had many lessons for us. And we see where we understand even more than before about the resilience of student parents. and how they are determined to complete their studies in whatever way that they have to make a better life for themselves and their children. And I'll,
We, have some time to, I ask my follow-up question. Are there any questions? So we have volunteers. Thank you. We have, volunteers and donors who are going to be hearing this, either watching this live or here. What are some things that you think they should know about how they can help support this kind of work?
I think that, I always worry just about talking about money. But what we heard from so many students was so simple, and we kept trying to complicate it. And, we have this huge student-parent task force of 27 people that are all fussing about this very thing, and all of a sudden we just stopped and said, let's stop. That really we have to pay attention to what we ask. We asked a question, we got an answer, we have to think about it. I should also say that we define a student parent as any student at CUNY that has responsibility for one or more children for part of the time. So that could mean that you're taking care of your partner's children. That could mean you take care of your mother's new stepchildren from a different marriage. We know that students' lives are complicated. So acknowledging how complicated they are really also speaks to this issue about money. And so the chancellor will likely continue his emergency fund, and there's great opportunity to contribute to that fund because every dollar matters. Every dollar matters. When we can give a student $500 or $1,000 in a quarter, that is the difference between being out or being in an apartment, the difference between kids getting school clothes or not, et cetera, et cetera. So that's one thing. Money to the Chancellor's Fund is a great vehicle. I think the other thing is that in a more informal sense, for the student parents that you might know, to be the person that is somewhat of the extended family, that is the person who cheerleads that person on, who acknowledges the sacrifice and the challenges and the exhaustion. Sometimes being affirmed is what we all need, right? For someone to acknowledge how difficult this is and how almost impossible it is. And then also to reflect, but apparently not impossible for you. You cannot underestimate how far those words go. Gisele talked about the Family Empowerment Program. This was a 3-year project that was funded by Andrew Cuomo through the Women's Justice Agenda. And this is its last year of funding, but it was designed to really build a community around a student parent, to really make all the things work together and just stay connected to that person, not let them slip through the cracks. And I will share this, that initially that funding came and it stipulated single mothers. And we had to go back to the governor's office and say, look, we're going to point out to you that we have single fathers. We have fathers that are parenting their children. Get out of the Middle Ages and understand who we are as a culture, and that we have also single fathers who are making this effort. And in our culture, we bash single fathers, especially Black single fathers. We really make it very difficult for them to persevere. We do. We make those barriers. So this notion of acknowledging that their intent is to parent their children effectively goes a very long way in making a difference in the culture.
And just want to throw out, I'm so glad you made that point. I just want to throw out this factoid that a colleague of mine educated me on. Black males are the most likely to be single fathers. So when we look at men who are parenting by themselves, the highest proportion are going to be Black men. So they don't get credit for the fact that they're more likely to be taking on that role.
I wouldn't say that at Black Male Initiative, and we
Great.
are very, very focused on empowering and supporting Black men to pursue higher ed, to pursue careers, and to be more effective fathers. They don't need, they're wired that way. They need somebody to give them the permission to do it, because as a society, we don't. And so that becomes a huge issue for us.
So tell me what you think, hearing all of this, you would say also to volunteers or to owners about how, the kind of impact they can have by supporting programs like this.
Firstly, it brings chills down my spine to just hear someone like speaking everything that I felt. It was just amazing, and of course, I thank you a million times for just being so supportive of us student parents, giving me the opportunity to speak. I think that as I am a single mother to two boys, two Afro-Latino boys, that I don't know where they will be. Being able to tell them, I had people calling me to ask if I was okay, asking if they were okay. Not only asking if they were okay, but asking about them by name. Being able to say, how is Gianni and how is Ryan, was very powerful. That financial aspect, knowing that I got an email from financial aid saying that on Friday, $500 is going to be deposited. That allowed me as a parent to know that this weekend I can get my kids the clothes, get them the coats. Because going to school full time, being a parent to two headaches, full time, taking care of my mom who's disabled and is dedicating herself to helping me any way that she can with my children, that extra funding came in when I needed it. I had Lyft as well, offering me opportunities. How can we help you? Can you complete the survey just so we know where you are? I had the family empowerment program at Hostos, that even though I transitioned to John Jay, they still reached out to say, are your needs being met? Do you need anything? What can I do? It was what I needed, and I hope that we can continue in any way that we can to have these services available for not only women, for men, for anyone that just needs the support. So I hope that I can be that role model to my children. I can be the role model to anyone that's going through any situation, student parents that are tempted to go back to school or have not taken that initiative. I hope that they can be advocates for themselves and for their children to continue to succeed, and we can continue to have these programs to offer.
You know, I'm going to think about your question about what philanthropy and others can do for this population for the next 2 weeks, and worry that I didn't answer enough. So seldom you get that question, right?
Well, and I should also, CUNY is really a leader in doing things that, and CUNY is doing things that probably,
Yes.
maybe that's what have you learned that you think others?
So we've just written a paper to disseminate widely about we did a quick little study about 3 campuses and what they do to support student parents, because we do see these centers as extended families. We intend to get in your business and make sure that you're okay, and we want you to love that. We certainly don't want to make it an issue. You know, one of the things that keeps me up at night is that we have a financial aid system, and we have a scholarship system, and we have people saying that CUNY should be free. That would be great, but that costs a lot of money. And so sometimes in my work, what I'm looking for is the bridge scholarship. Scholarship that we can use when a student runs out of financial aid, is not eligible for some other scholarship for whatever reason, but really needs to finish. What is it that we can do for a student who's maybe used up all their financial aid because they weren't sure what they wanted to study at first, or they got bad advising, and there they are fresh out of money, financial aid, but they may not finish. And so CUNY has been very active in looking for what I call bridge scholarships to get people through, to get people to come back if they've left. One of the things that we're doing with the campus childcare programs is making sure that they age down to serve infants. Because if you have to step out of college while your baby, becomes, for the first 2 years, you may not come back. But what we know is that parents who come back with a small child, a baby, actually thrive, because it's very lonely when you birth a child. And when you can birth a child and then have an extended family around you, and you're only on campus for 18, 20 hours a week, not 50 hours a week like a new mother would be working, it really sets you up for success. And so we've been really looking at how to age down programs so that they can serve children from as young as 8 weeks. And then, again, get in those parents' business. How's the nursing going? What are your questions about your baby? All new mothers, no matter how, I have a background in child development. When I was a new mother, I called someone else with my questions. One time I did that. They said, "Why are you calling me?" I said, "Just answer the question." I don't know why. I'm calling you because I don't know the answer, right? And so how can we support somebody in all of that? So that's what I would say.
Add into that, especially that was a very, very important part for me as well, because after a while, TAP and Pell does run out. I am in that situation. My credit is bad because the pandemic happened. Numerous aspects of my life have always been a gamble in order to financially succeed while I'm taking this big coursework to complete my education. So not having any financial aid, but then having programs saying, you know what, the school has this scholarship, scholarships open up next week, get in there, make some applications, and then having some that I just had to literally say, answer questions, make me qualify for it. That availability was absolutely incredible. That's what has gotten me this far as well. That was a very big challenge. And also with the childcare aspect, being that I do have a special needs child that just needs someone to just be with him. That's all he needs. He just needs that attention. And it makes you hesitant. Financially, I can't afford to go to school, so why do this? And technically, no one's going to want to stay with my son because he's such a challenge. Why should I do this? I had those voices in my ear, asking me the questions, poking and probing, and also getting my wheels to turn to question and evaluate what were my needs at that point. And again, I can't mention them enough, how many times that they've reached out to find scholarships on the outside, any sources that they could, to kind of get me any type of fund, just so that I can continue my education that I had already set so much into. So I think that's very important to get those bridges, or even call it a bridge scholarship. I think that's the best way, a bridge between parents and education.
Ultimately, as we kind of wrap up, I'd like to ask, and both of you hopefully can answer, how you value, now that you're close to finishing, of this, just of everything that you've done. And there's a lot of talk out there, and this is a lot of talk about college not being worth it anymore. Own reasons why I feel like that means are going to continue to send their children to college. They grow up in an environment where it's assumed those messages aren't going to reach the person who wasn't sure they should go to college and is looking for. So for someone who had a, why is this important? Yes. Thank you, Sherry.
Thank you so much. Asking that question.
Thank you.
So, first, it's unreal. My hooding ceremony is next Thursday. Commencement is the 31st. It's hard to detach, if it makes sense. It's hard to say, like, is this it? Am I done? Is my degree enough? Hard because I've made it. I made it this far. And looking back from hindsight, all those tears the nights that having to turn the light off, knowing that I have a 8-page paper to write. My 4-year-old is like, I want to play, I want to do this, and I want to do that. And then waking up the next day to an email from my advisors, from Lyft, from someone just reminding me of what I'm doing. It motivates me to want to keep going, my education going, or even if it's not to achieve another degree, but at least some sort of education, some sort of empowerment, some sort of just connection, growth. Yes, personal and also something that could be reciprocated. I feel that I was fortunate enough in receiving. How can I give back? I focus myself a lot on my 9-year-old sees me as like this prehistoric person. It's unreal to him that I go to school. Seeing me with a textbook is like, for school. It has allowed me to make school into a good place, a safe place, a reality. And it also has shown him that the impossible is really zero. As long as you have the support, you have the dedication, you have the motivation, which comes from that extended family, you can do it. So I hope that somehow, some way, my words can empower others and continue to empower me and empower my children, empower my mom, empower my family, everyone, to continue to give that chance.
I don't know. Any other comments? Okay. So just to repeat the questions, a mother of 3 who just came to the country a few years ago, and is overwhelmed with everything that's going on and trying to be a student. And so a question to Giselle is, how do you deal with it? How do you keep going?
At first, it's a scary thing to know that, well, to feel as if you're alone, because coming into school, not knowing anyone, not having any resources, as Sherry mentioned earlier, you get these emails, but until you're not in need, you don't care. You don't pay you pay minimal mind to it. You see the email, it doesn't draw your attention. In my opinion, I think I took a step back and actually went back into my email and looked at those resources, asked questions. I spoke amongst classmates, especially I noticed in the evening, I saw like the older crowd come in, people that looked as if they just came from work, they were getting ready to go to work after class, and just asked questions and made those connections. At Hostels, we have the phenomenal Christine Francis. I can't love her enough. And I have also another party, College Discovery at Hostels, Maria Cano, Eric, Catherine, all of those. There's a ton of resourceful and genuine people at Hostels that have kept me afloat, just being able to have that conversation. So my best advice would be to advocate for yourself, ask questions, email people, just ask for the support that you need and make the connections.
Absolutely. And again, as a former professor, I would say one of the things that we see all the time, the most common stress response is withdrawal. So you're overwhelmed, you don't talk to anybody, you don't ask any questions. The number of students that I had where I would disappear and I'd say, are you okay? Do you need anything? And they would pop up the day before the last day of class and say, okay, is there anything I can do? And I'm like, why didn't you tell me like 3 weeks ago? So it's natural to want to bury and hide. That's the exact opposite of what you want to do. So I think hopefully what you're hearing over and over again is there are resources out there. Go ask. Ask somebody for help. Everybody needs help at some point. That makes a difference. Was there another question? Or? Question here. Mm-hmm.
So, so the,
Yeah, so the question was, what are her transition plans? What are her near-term, long-term goals now that she's about to graduate?
still something that I feel I'm questioning. I am, so, as I mentioned, this is my last semester, so I do graduate. Over the summer, I will be on externship, completing required hours in order to get my degrees conferred. So I'm exploring my options for jobs. I'm interviewing, which is something that CUNY does have always readily available. They do have career services. At John Jay in particular, I did attend, they had a virtual job fair where companies decided to just come in and make themselves available for, I want to say it was about 2 hours, and allowed our population of students, whether it be newly graduates, graduating class, or even freshmen, to just put their resumes out there and have that interview experience. Some landed jobs, some were connected. I was one of the ones that was connected to potentially a job. My goal from here is to continue to their mental health. I think that we all need support. We need connections. I am very, very passionate about the criminal justice system and bringing about a lot of reform, a lot of empowerment to those that are in need. But at the same time, I want to go back into the communities or into networks to provide that support. Any type of therapy is helpful. So that's where I'm at right now. What keeps me motivated in the drive is the support that I have. I feel like I have these constant cheerleaders that are rooting me on, and especially reaching the finals, reaching like the end. They've been waiting for this moment, probably more than I have, because like I said, it feels unreal. That keeps me motivated. And anytime when I feel like I'm losing that drive, I always remember who was here, who's still watching me, and also my little people are always watching.
So the question was, what kind of post-graduation support would be helpful to someone like Giselle?
Definitely internships, definitely here, having, just the financial resources to get clothing for interviews, making connections, resume building, mock interviews, anything that would actually prep us for the real world. Maybe even if there was some way to collaborate with any major corporations that are willing to allow a postgraduate like me to just come in and shadow. Give me the opportunity to come out there, show you what I got, and see how I will benefit your corporation. What changes I may be able to bring in that a company is looking for. I think just making those connections, establishing that would be very helpful.
And statistics do show students who go through internships are like 90% or more likely to have a job upon graduation than students who don't, which again speaks to another potential disadvantage that student parents have because they don't have the time to do internships like someone, it was just responsible for me when I was in school. So yeah, I think that's a great recommendation that even if you can't do anything else, if you're open to having a student come in and work with you for a couple of weeks so they can get that experience and you can see how that drive translates into their performance as a worker, can make a big difference. Other questions? Okay, well, again, it's been an honor and a privilege for me to be able to be here. I want to congratulate Giselle. Enjoy, post lot. The one thing I'm noticing that I'm feeling a little bit, I'm not sure how, is this generation gets to post all their celebrations on social media. I had to put it on a little, whatever kind of camera we had back then. So definitely let everybody know, because you never know who you're inspiring. And so I know I've been inspired, I'm sure everybody here has been inspired by your story. So you deserve all your flowers, enjoy them, and keep going. No, that support doesn't stop. You'll continue to have it.
Thank you so much. I appreciate this opportunity. I appreciate beyond, beyond grateful for all the support that I've gotten. And just the same way as I hope I inspired you, continue to inspire others. You just never know in a conversation what that effect would have on someone, so inspire each other. Thank you so much
And
again.
thank you to Neuberger Berman for hosting this and for all of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.